today's meeting by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the land on which we are gathered and pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging. Welcome to the City Infrastructure Committee meeting of the 10th of August. I declare this meeting open at 10:18 a.m. Due to the Queensland Government's current COVID-19 restrictions, this week committee hearings will not have physical public gallery. The health and safety and wellbeing of Logan staff and community is Council's top priority during the COVID-19 pandemic. Welcome to the via live stream. I'd also A6 of the Local Government and Committee Meeting Code for the purposes of audio recording. The closed sessions in today's meeting for Council's internal confidential use only is now displaying on the screen behind me. Is there a mover for this motion? Mr Mayor, seconded. Councillor Hall, all those in favour please raise your hand. Noted. Councillor Bradley? Oh, yeah. Thank you very much, that's unanimous. Any councillor? No, that's it. Leave of absence, there are no leave of absences for today. Very well done. Moving on to item 4.1. I'll now refer to item 4.1. Can the Road and Infrastructure Delivery Manager, Mr Simon Malouf, please enter the discussions? Before we open discussion on this item, do any councillors have a conflict of interest to declare? I know that, but we've got to go through this part first, Mr Director. There being none, I note that item 4.1 is confidential. It is considered necessary to take the discussion of this report into a closed session as the background papers to the report are to be considered confidential as they relate to ongoing procurement and contractual negotiation matters. I see Councillor Hermai sitting up straighter in his chair. Do any councillors wish to move into closed session for this item and, if applicable, provide an overview of your intended discussions if it's different to the prepared motion? I remind councillors that if there is no desire to discuss the confidential matters, there is no requirement to move into closed session. If so, I now open the floor to councillors. Does anyone want to speak on it? No. I note that the motion be read as follows. I've already read that. Is there a mover for this motion? Councillor Wilcox? To move into confidential.
Oh, sorry. No.
There being none, thank you very much. Dun, 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 dun. Blah, blah, blah. Is there a mover for the motion? Have we got the motion on the screen for the report to be accepted? Are you moving the motion or? Yep, so Councillor Hermai is moving the motion on screen. Councillor Bannon is seconding that. All those in favour, please raise your hands, keeping them up in the air so that the people can record them. That's carried unanimously with all councillors voting for it. Well, that was really easy, wasn't it? So that marks the end of the Road Infrastructure Delivery Manager reports. Is there any general business? Councillor Wilcox.
Thank you. So this is both for Mr Malouf and Mr Riley. I can take this off. Thank you. So on the 26th of July, I had a couple of residents approach me about the Crowson Lane project because they have been approached by officers, unbeknown to me, regarding an oopsie, we need to take more land. I had no knowledge of it. I didn't know officers. I knew officers had been out there door knocking regarding the project, but I didn't know that officers were now going out there talking to residents going, I'm so sorry, we've done our planning, we've done our plans, we need to take more land. So I've requested a briefing on the 26th or the 27th, still waiting. Mr Riley's told me this morning that it's coming, but I didn't have a heads up on this. The residents are cranky. I've copped it all over social media. I've had Donna, who lives on Crowson Lane, and she said that council are making visits to properties this week, and she had one visit and it didn't end well, and she's having sleepless nights, anxiety about not knowing what's going on. I had Alma also text me, and she said that she's had a phone call from Dylan telling her that things have changed and they are going to take more land. They had a meeting on the 28th of July, but unfortunately I wasn't able to attend. Still no update for me. So wondering if you can tell me about why we are now taking more land, and it looks like there's probably up to at least, I don't know, 20 metres from the front of people's properties that are getting taken.
Mr. Director.
Through you, Madam Chair. Certainly, we have had preliminary meetings which were some time back in regards to... Sorry, before I go there, I'll actually apologise for the fact that the briefing you've asked for hasn't been provided to you, and that should have been forthcoming. So I do apologise for that. We will rectify that as soon as we are physically able to. In regards to preliminary meetings which we had with residents, which were some months ago, we were actually looking at potential for land take at that stage. Our detailed design was not complete. We've progressed that detailed design, and we now have some properties where we actually have had a greater impact than we had originally anticipated, and those discussions have changed in regards to some of those property owners. There are, I guess, numerous of those, and probably more than I can discuss here today. We will need to meet with you and actually have that discussion and run through those details with you.
So originally it was a 36 metre wide road. What's it blowing out to be now if we're taking more land?
The land matters that we're looking at are not actually associated with the through carriageways of the road. They're actually in areas where we've ended up with having to have fill batters, or where we've actually ended up having to cut and to actually be able to shape the land to be able to facilitate that. But we can run through that, as I said, in more detail. So it's not additional lanes, not additional parking lanes or the likes. It is being able to facilitate the geometry of the existing road.
So Alma has told me that apparently now the power is going underground, and this is why we're taking more land.
Through you, Madam Chair. There will be sections of underground power, but that hasn't actually altered the extent of land take. It's more to accommodate security of project delivery for the compulsory acquisition process, and the batters, where we're either in fills or cuts, are required to be part of the compulsory acquisition process. So that is ensuring the delivery of the project, and that land can be accessed. For the compulsory process, that needs to be part of the provisions of the land take, and there may not have been some clear communication around that from early discussions.
So how many properties altogether are affected with the project? Do we know?
Through you, Madam Chair, I can't recall off the top of my head, but I believe it's in the low 50s. Now, some of those projects, some of those properties are in areas where there are larger cuts and larger fills. Not every location along the site is impacted to the same extent by this, but yeah. The areas where there are either larger cuts, and I think the cuts in that location are usually around, throughout the project, the deepest cuts are up to about 2 metres, and I think the fills are of that same order of magnitude.
Okay, so on the 29 properties that are on Crowson, all of them will be affected with varying degrees, with more so at the Greenbank Road end, and they're going to have substantial amounts of property that's taken. What I don't understand is how through all this planning we get to I don't know, what was it, a $20 or $30 million project, when we're now letterbox dropping or door knocking with a big oopsie. I don't understand how we can get to this point where it's a $20, $30 million project with planning behind it, and now we're getting to this stage that the residents don't know what's going on. I still don't know what's going on. They're cranky, I'm cranky. This isn't a project anyone wants out there. I'm gobsmacked, I really am.
Through you, Madam Chair. Certainly as we progress through the projects, and this is the case in this one. We certainly do planning works, which actually gives us that preliminary idea of where we need to be, and then we do detailed design. We're now at the completion of that detailed design stage, and we do run the risk that there can be changes between the two. The size of the project aside, that is the case for our planning to design detailed stage.
I've been doing so much research on this. I still do not understand, and I know that it's in the Way to Go program, and I know it's ranked quite highly on the Way to Go program, but you've also got the Kenny Road extension for Councillor Bannon as well, which his residents don't want. When and where has the community consult been with the residents? And I know that it says in here that there was community consult, and I'm intrigued to know how much community consult was done, probably out in the west with our residents. I know that I think I probably filled something in back in 2018, but this Way to Go program still does not show the roads that probably need to get done first. You've got in here the 4-laning of Crowson Lane, Derry Creek Road, Homestead Drive. One would know why you need 4 lanes on Homestead Drive when you've got the Springfield Greenbank Arterial down the bottom. You've got Pub Lane mixed in there. There's Kenny Road mixed in there. You're already moving outside of the list on where things are going. I'm still trying to understand how and why Crowson Lane is going ahead. And please don't tell me it's because it's in the order, because you're already working outside that order. You've already got Stony Camp Road from Tebby
Sorry,
Road to Mount
Councillor
Lindesay.
Wilcox, are you debating the Way to Go project? Are you actually raising the concerns around the consultation?
Both. I'm raising the concerns around the consultation because my state member had a really good conversation with me yesterday, and she
Let's try.
So yesterday when I was speaking to Charisse Mullen, she's flicked me a briefing note from 2019 that says there's scoping investigations for a 4-lane upgrade to Goodna Road. There's a design of Goodna Road upgrade for the Springfield Arterial. There's no mention here of Crowson Lane. Yet then you come back into this and everything's out of order, everything's out of sync. I still don't understand why the residents are still, why Crowson Lane is still going ahead. Yes, I know you've gone so far in the project, but who's to say a project can't stop? The residents don't want this project to go ahead. If you put Crowson Lane ahead, there's nothing at the end of Crowson Lane for the state government to upgrade their end of Crowson Lane, so you're still going to have congestion getting onto Mount Lindesay Highway, and then the Green Road intersection still not getting upgraded. So you're still going to have congestion here. The congestion everywhere else still isn't alleviated because we haven't worked with the process. The state government's just announced, $31 million into projects in Division 11 for roads, yet it's to connect Newbeath Road, yet council will, I haven't seen anything on the plans for the rest of Newbeath Road to get connected, so Newbeath Road is still going to be a road to nowhere, and there's still going to be a missing link of about 2 kilometres. Why can we not stop Crowson Lane, transfer it over to the Newbeath Road project so that we can actually connect it, work with the Greenbank Transport Study, which, might I add, my state members still have not seen a copy of it, yet the Defence has got a copy of it, and you, in no uncertain terms, told me last year in a briefing note not to let anyone know about it, yet your branch is sending that document out without confidential on it, because I saw it in a room with the Defence man. So why can we...
There, and let that question be answered first.
Through you, Madam Chair. There's quite a fair bit in there. I'll do my best to get across all of that. So Crowson Lane, along with numerous of the other projects you actually mentioned, are projects which are within the agreed sub-regional infrastructure agreement, which is the agreement that was struck between Council and EDQ. that has priority within that program for delivery of those programs. Crolson Lane is certainly in the first tranche of projects which were agreed in that document by, admittedly, the previous council, but were locked in as the projects that we run with. You have touched on that those major projects for us from start to commencement are in the order of around 4 years for us to actually deliver, and we are working on several of those at this point in time. We're also working on planning on numerous other projects, as you've mentioned, around, say, Goodna Road, Teviot Road, and those projects which will support that overall development in that area. The biggest part of the funding that's coming, well, a significant portion of the funding which is coming for those areas comes from the developer cohort from the PDA. Across our projects, they're contributing about 40% of all of the funding in that program, which is about supporting that bigger growth that will come. You spoke to Newbeath Road as well, which has got funding which has been recently announced, I believe, by the state government for Newbeath Road and for a section of Teviot Road at the bottom end, which is also inside the PDA. At the moment, we are doing a piece of work to relook at the priorities which are within that SRIA, and we will be coming to the councillors shortly to give a briefing on modelling, which is effectively being finished at the moment. We do need to work with EDQ through that arrangement as well, because the SRIA requires an agreement between us and them on the future priorities of that program. In terms of effectively putting aside Crolson Lane to move to a Teviot Road, effectively a 3 or 4 year hole in terms of what we would deliver. It wouldn't actually bring that project on quicker. It would just effectively mean we would stop Crolson Lane. Crolson Lane is a major arterial connector for us out of that PDA area. It does come through to Mount Lindesay Highway. The extension of Chambers Flat Road down to the extension of Mount Lindesay Highway actually down to Chambers Flat Road, with Crolson Lane being on the other side of that, so that will actually work to effectively complete that part of the network.
You just also mentioned that it could effectively stop Crowson Lane. I'm pretty damn sure the residents and I would be pretty damn happy if we just stopped it. Who advocated for the SRIA order? Was it done with the administrator? Was it done with previous councillors?
The SRIA was a document which was advocated for by council from somewhere around 2010, effectively with looking at both EDQ and Flagstone, which were coming on as major infrastructure, major urban growth within council. Without the SRIA, the full cost of all of that infrastructure in between those development areas back to our existing growth, the existing developed area of council, would have to have all been borne by council.
I get that, but the SRIA, the plans that I know that have been agreed to, 3 years ago now, because now it's up for rediscussion, and that's the one that's actually getting discussed at the moment to change the order. So who put what order those roads would have been in? Because I know that Charisse, Linus and myself don't like that order. Pretty sure other councillors probably don't like the order that it's currently in as well. And I know that we're here to advocate for our residents, but the fact is we're not allowed into those meetings to know what order they're going into. And I know that I sat through an EDQ meeting and he said, you need to advocate to your officers on what order those roads are in. Quite frankly, I don't trust what order those roads are put in, because I'm not sitting in that meeting. I'm not in there saying what order those roads should be in for my residents.
The modelling which is actually done is done by a transport modeller, which is actually external to council. It is joint agreement between ourselves and EDQ and DTMR. It's the one transport model which actually sits across the whole of South East Queensland, which actually looks at, based on the population growth that we can see, where the demands will actually be on our roads. In terms of the reset paper, as I said, we have commissioned that modelling work to be done again based on the more recent information which has come out of the planning area around where our population growths have been in the last 5 years, and where we can see that predicted future population growth in the upcoming years as well. We will certainly bring that modelled information back to council for councillors to review. We will arrange a briefing on that.
But does that modeller, he, she, whoever it is, do they come and sit in the traffic days on end? Do they know how the traffic flows, or do they do it with a computer screen with 1 lane in, 1 lane out, with the amount of cars that you can't predict for the amount of houses that you have until you've got the census data, and then hopefully you know how many cars there are for every single house? They don't come out and they don't sit in the traffic day in, day out. I do. Apparently people think in my division that I must have a flying car and I don't sit in the traffic, but I have to defend myself every single day to these residents that I don't have a driver, that I don't have a magic broomstick and I fly around the area missing all the traffic. How many days a week? Because I can't predict which way the traffic is going to go. My husband got stuck and it took him 3 sets of lights yesterday at 4:30 in the afternoon to get home because of the pub lane intersection. The whole of the division has 1 lane in and out. I don't class Mount Lindesay Highway as a way to get in because the traffic just moves around inside the division. Like, I have thoroughfares, and it's not my residents, it's the people that actually use my roads to transfer from Logan to Ipswich, vice versa, and out to Beaudesert. So it's not just the 24,000 people that live in my area that use these roads.
So we'll just pull that one back because I think everyone's got that issue in their division, in all honesty. We're transit areas for other divisions. Mr Director, do you have any advice for people at home feeling this pain? Obviously, Councillor Wilcox is trying to keep council standing, but if people are being fed information that is not quite correct, or they're being told that something You can say no, if that's the case.
Certainly we would be looking to tie down for Crossing Lane our final position in regards to that. We've had detailed design for this stuff. In regards to the broader network, where we're looking across those southern parts of the city where we're seeing significant population growth, the road corridors that we actually have in that area are not sufficient for the volume of traffic that we ultimately need to move. So if you're asking me in regards to future projects, can I give a commitment that we're not going to be able to acquire further land? No, I can't. The reality is for the hierarchy of roads that we need to build to support the growth that's coming, we will need land on those major corridors. Certainly, getting back to your question in regards to taking into consideration the most up-to-date information, we certainly do look at all of the traffic volumes that all feeds into our traffic model. The traffic model sits across the whole of South East Queensland, so it's picking up not only the traffic which we're seeing coming from those growth areas in the PDA, it's also picking up what we can see occurring in Park Ridge and where they're running to what is actually all the way over at Barscroft, and it's actually modelling all of that. So it's using the most up-to-date information, and then it's using the population prediction figures, as I said, which actually come to us through planning. So where we're actually looking at the growth that we'll see in the next 10 years, it is the best information that we have. It is the information that we're basing our planning scheme on as we're going forward as well. That doesn't mean that we won't see congestion on our network. There certainly is, with the amount of growth that's been occurring, a lag between that and when we will have that infrastructure built, and we will continue to operate with that. But everything we do is about optimising the whole of the network, which should then alleviate the issues that we see on individual locations. And certainly where we're talking about one of the difficult places we're seeing at the moment is that roundabout at Little Range and Teviot, and certainly Crossing Lane is part of the longer-term solution to be able to divert traffic away from the intersection.
I know that you're trying to divert traffic on Crossing Lane,
but there's so much land that we can use that's on Mill Road, Teviot Road. We don't have to own land effectively off 50 residents. There's probably a very, under 10 residents that you would affect on that project alone. And did you just say that Crowson Lane, yes, it's in detailed design, effectively, even though it is in detailed design, it still can be a no. We still can't stop it.
Council has given a commitment under the SRA to construct that section of road. So we have signed that road.
So in my next EDQ meeting on the 26th of August, Sharice Minus and I don't think this is the correct project to be going ahead. If Sharice Minus and I are in that EDQ meeting, we can effectively do what?
There is a signed contract between council and EDQ in regards to delivery of infrastructure, which relates to a significant amount of funding, something in the order of 600 million, which will come to council, which you will not have to fund, which will come from developers.
The developers don't want this to go ahead. The developers are on Sharice Minus and I.
We're not doing an argument. The biggest part is it absolutely is communication. Councillor Murphy's got it in one. The communication has to be strong, it's got to be clear, and it's got to be concise to residents about why you're doing this, how we're doing it, and it's not you and us, it's us, we're council. We've got to take on the decisions of a previous council. So how do we make this better? Can we lessen the road, given we've got that beautiful big 6 metre buffer, much like Kenny Road? I mean, there are so many questions to be asked. I just don't know that this is the right time to do it. Can we ask for a briefing on these two particular roads and any other roads that councillors have an issue with, and get that done at the earliest opportunity, not months down the track? How do you feel about that, Councillor Bannon?
I don't think everyone wants a briefing on it like this. Because I've been wanting to talk.
Yeah, you're on next.
It's communication's right. You can't be talking to residents or telling residents stuff without us knowing. And that comes from your staff to the surveyors that were on Kenny Road on Friday telling people that the road's going ahead because of the Olympics. And I had people calling me up crying on the phone saying they're lied to them. Which just infuriated me beyond belief. So and I'll bring you back to when we had the meeting with the mayor and the council Lane and the deputy mayor was there and Councillor Fraser, when you talked about taking land, not much land on Kenny Road. No one believes that. I'm not saying it's you, but because it always comes back to need a little bit more. We need a little bit more. And your traffic modelling's flawed, and I know roads. Edelson Road's proof that the modelling's flawed. So I keep saying to the roads department, unless you involve councils a lot more in decision making on roads and talking to our community, then your whole division will be restructured to bring us into the picture. Because we're the ones that caught the bullets. I was the one that saw Councillor Wilcox get bullets thrown at her on the community page because people were knocking on residents' doors, taking more land and she didn't know. And then when they asked that, it's embarrassing for us to be the voice of the community who don't even know what you're doing. It's embarrassing. And it makes us look bad. And you should see the comments she got. So feel for Councillor Wilcox. I'd be going livid if it was me as well. And I do, same as I went livid on Friday when people ring out ball in their eyes out on the phone. And now there's an email to the mayor, get chomped about the same thing. Don't talk to residents about major stuff unless we know about it. The whole department. It can't happen. We're the ones who cop the bullets. So with the briefing, it's rather councils decide. I don't generalise, but I don't need another briefing. All I'm going to say is anything to do with the road in my division, whether it's Kenny Road or Edelson Road, I want to know everything from the first traffic model to everything all the way through. And if you don't put me in that, then we'll make you put me in. That's simple. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Oh, thank you very much for that. That's very, very good. Councillor Gransky.
Madam Chair, just a comment. If we were to have a briefing further to Councillor Wilcox's roads that she raised, the reality is I think that we would want a briefing for so many roads across the whole city. This isn't an isolated incident. Certainly the PDA areas in my corner of the world have created quite a ripple effect out there, and it's quite a challenge. I'm very happy to have a briefing, but if there's going to be one, then I'll be adding up a list that I'd like investigated. I'm not sure all councils would have the appetite to sit through it. But I do agree with Councillor Bannon and Councillor Wilcox that I welcome greater communication and greater involvement in what's happening within my electorate.
Perhaps that being said, maybe, Mr Director, you happy to take a general feedback, so if we can go either via the Chair or the Deputy Mayor with your feedback on your local roads community consultation, preferably through me, then we can actually come to some consensus about moving forward and how that happens. Are you happy for that to occur, Mr Director?
At this point, I probably need to go back to the commitment that I was making before, that for sub-regional infrastructure agreement and those major roads that we're talking about, we need to come and do a briefing to the councillors shortly. So we have been remodelled that network, and that sits across the majority of the roads that we're actually talking about, and we will be discussing those with EDQ. Now that sits across both PDA areas, so that also sits across what we're seeing at Yarraville as well. So that briefing is a briefing that we do need to do, and we do need to come back and see more than happy to commit to that, and he's already on our agenda.
I note that Councillor Wilcox still has more questions. Councillor Cransley on that?
Sorry, just to close the loop on that, I think that would be very helpful, Mr Riley. The strip is something that we spoke about a great deal in the last term, but we haven't really spoken as a group on that, how it comes together, what it looks like, and what agreements are in place. So perhaps a bit of a contextual conversation around that before we get down to the detail. But the history of that, I think, would be useful to councillors. And I certainly welcome an opportunity to see if any of the hierarchy of the roads that are identified in the strip has changed. So I'd like to say that I would welcome a workshop with regard to that aspect. Thank you.
Councillor Wilcox?
I'll just finish it off with, I think the briefing probably needs to happen before the 26th of August, because that's when we've got the EDQ meeting here to discuss the roads and that sort of thing. One thing I will just leave you with is I'm sick of the branches working in silos, and that's in silos without the councillors' input and without the state government, because you're both doing projects and they both have no way that they're actually going to get the traffic to flow, because there's no, like, it'll just end up in a pinch point, the same as what the Centenary Highway did for years and years and years, because it was 2 lanes coming down into 1 lane to get through onto the Western Freeway. It's going to happen here, and all I'm going to cop is more barrage of angry residents going, well, why can't council coordinate this? And I'm like, well, I don't know. I have my say. I advocate for my residents. But it doesn't seem to be that anyone's actually hearing what we're saying. You're meant to be working with us, and so far you're not. All we keep getting is blocked, because we know what our residents want, and we can't deliver it for them.
Thanks very much. No one's got anything to Simon? Mr Malou?
Through you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to probably close off by saying that as far as our major road infrastructure projects are concerned, we've got more than $500 million of projects currently on the table in various stages of development. And a lot of these are the projects that you are interested in, and the few that are where there isn't as much, I guess, support, they are actually in the minority of this overall body of work that is happening. We are not operating in isolation from, I guess, what the needs of the network are to support the city into the future. So, in line with the commitment of the Director, we will give you a briefing to make sure that there is line of sight to what is happening there, but there is a lot of work, and they are current priorities, but in the terms of the sizes of projects that we're talking about, the current priority are things that will happen in the next 2 to 4, maybe 5 years. So the fact that one project is happening right now is more a factor of where that project and how it's, I guess, the hurdles it's had to cross in coming to fruition. Some projects are far more complex than others, and it will take a lot longer to come to fruition. So these are, as I said, these are $500 million or more of current priorities, and it's just that Grouse Lane has happened to reach the community earlier than the other projects. The other projects will be on priority.
Councillor Bradley, you had a question?
Thank you. Through the chair, this is, as I don't want to actually talk on this subject, so when it comes to...
separate general business? Okay. Councillor Wilcox, any further questions? So Councillor Bradley?
Through the chair, firstly I want to commend you, Chair, of this has been going on for over half an hour, and obviously it's an issue that is something I'm very passionate about, community consultation, and to me that also involves councillors. So hopefully that message has got through. But the reason I put my hand up in GB was to state publicly that TMR are meeting me today. Yeehaw. So at long last, I will be able to find out what is going on in Springwood, and I want to pass on to the Director, please pass on my sincere thanks to the staff who are coming along this afternoon at 3 o'clock. I'm very much looking forward to what is actually going on, and also hopefully in the planning for Springwood, we will get a clearer idea whether that can go ahead or not go ahead. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anyone else? Councillor Jeremiah?
Thank you, Madam Chair. My question isn't about big contracts or complex projects. My question is about fairness and government delivering essential services. Logan Reserve Road is a big and important road for Logan Reserve, and in March this year it was flooded, and as a result of that flooding, the line marking on that road was removed. Now that flood was 6 months ago now, and that line marking still hasn't been replaced. So I want to ask the Director of Roads today, can the residents of Division 8 be assured that Council is doing everything in its power to get that line marking fixed on such an important road? Thank you.
Mr. Director?
Thank you, Councillor Jeremiah. I will take that up and come back to you offline, but yes, taking forward to your request.
Thank you.
No one else for general business? Thank you very much, everybody, today. I declare the meeting closed at 11:54 a.m.